Okay, welcome to the second part. This is the progressions, regressions, if you will, for the lateral depth jump and the hurdle hop. Because they're both jumping series, I went ahead and put them together to save a little bit of time. Pretty much the same slide as we covered in the Pro Agility, just talk about that they have basic movement, basic control, and basic strength. Like what do we look like when we start putting a little stress to the system and having them jump around a little bit? Can they control themselves? So those are important factors to consider as we move forward. And as always, we just want to make sure that everything that we do is following a good 1 to 2 to 4 minute general warm up. And we just want to kind of begin with the end in mind. This is just an easy example of the lateral depth jump. And again, beginning with the end in mind, this is our example of the hurdle hop. We'll talk about some errors that we see there in a different slide. Pretty much piggybacking on what we said for the Pro Agility series, I'm going to want to see some good movement here, preferably in a goblet squat, preferably full range of motion before we begin anything. I'm also going to want to see, can they do some semblance of a walking lunge or a lunging position? Are they tight in their hips? And then I'm going to want them to see some groundwork before we start putting obstacles in front of them or having them jump onto or off of any kind of box. I mean, I think the ground is a great place to start. Something that's real easy to do is like, how do we control ourselves? I like little static starts, static stops. We do these a lot in weightlifting, actually. We'll have them just say, what do we look like there? And what do we look like there? And so if those things look good, we'll move forward. And here's the next step regression. Just have them do it a little more full speed, and then go ahead and having them, after they have the other down, I'll have them string 2 together and see what that looks like. It's interesting because, as you know, some athletes, they look amazing with like one jump, and then you throw the second jump in there and the wheels fall off. So that's why I always like to do a couple series of jumps to see what that looks like. Sort of the same thing here, only this time we'll go ahead and have them do what they're going to do, only on the ground, and see how we look like kind of in a more controlled environment. There's lots of ways to do this. This is the way we like to do it. We just have them sort of do this, sort of set that same static position just from a depth jump. Like, what do we look like there? Okay, and you'll find that when the athlete's pretty good off the ground, this seems pretty silly, almost very, very easy for them, and that's how we want it to be. And I like for them to go ahead and jump forward before we have them jump laterally. I think it's a really great, easy place to start. Okay, and assuming everything looks good, we'll go ahead and progress him to our full lateral depth jump. Okay. Now, based on the assumption that our groundwork looks good and some of the other things that we do look good, we'll go ahead and start. I like to use just static little box jumps, just super easy stuff. As you see, we have 5 or 6 different sizes there. So I'll actually just take the athlete sort of right up the chain, so to speak. And we'll start, make sure we can land well and control ourselves there, and then we'll move up in boxes. And kind of the same thing we see here this time, just a little, the next highest box is up. Like, how do we look? I talked about it in another series, but I was taught that angle that you see right there should match his takeoff angle. There was another slide that I had in another presentation, but you get the idea that, you know, I was taught I want that trunk angle, my hip angle, and my knee angle to be the same on takeoff or landing, where we have too high of a box. And then just progressing him on up to the next level. Good. And again, assuming our angles and everything else looks good, take him up to that highest box. And, you know, a lot of coaches will do this differently. I like to just set them up for success. I'll put the low hurdle down and just have them jump over it. I don't cue them a whole lot. I just watch to see what they do, how do they use their arms. But I do want to make sure that they're not overly stiff in their landing, common errors, too wide of base, too narrow of base. Also, I want to make sure that they land well and land softly or somewhat under control, so to speak. So let's see. Now you see how he kicks his leg out. He goes into a little bit of internal rotation on his hip. Started doing that on the right. And you'll see it start to show up later here. So that's something that I would cue. I like for them to tuck their knees a little bit better, like you see a lot of the track guys doing. And here's the next thing. You see that external, I mean, it's really subtle how he kicks his feet out instead of tucking. But that's something that like for this kid, he moves pretty well. You notice he's good and under control, but I would probably coach him up on that just a little bit. And here's our final progression, or if you will, of the hurdle hop. Now here you can see how that right leg there, I should say thigh hip there, goes into internal rotation, right? So he internally rotates that, and he doesn't need to. We do this in slow-mo. He's totally, well enough vertically to make this, but sometimes that's mental. It's not something that he does, but if this were something we did on a regular basis, I would teach him to spring more and then bounce. And of course, we could put like successive hurdle hops together, which makes it certainly a lot more challenging. Have to be a lot more under control that way. First, final thoughts on these two progressions. Really, it's always the same. I mean, in my mind, I think about basic strength and movement. I think about keep working full joint range of motion, any mobility restrictions we may have through full joint range of motion strength training. I think about using the Oli variations so that we can keep producing power or producing force quickly. And also in injury prevention, I think shows up here more so than say in the pro agility, because we are jumping and landing. So I think you have an opportunity to evaluate that athlete and how they land, and then hopefully work with sports med folks and get some stuff straightened out there if you see anything at all. And when to progress and why was the second part of that. I think about the same thing. It's like, are we under control? Is there an advantage to progressing? And is it safe to do so? And I think as long as all those things match and there's some benefit to us and we're not wasting our time, then I think it's safe to progress to the next level. Okay, and that's my series on the lateral depth jump and the hurdle hop. And I think that's everything. Thank you very much.